Okay, before I start, I want to mention today's class is for the four Shlema, Behenya Bas B'rachad Leah. She should have a very speedily recovery. She's in a very bad situation, and they wish to do a lot of miracles. Also, Muktzeh Shem, next week, Wednesday, there is no class. In 2 weeks, there will be a class Wednesday. Monday, there's no more class until January 26th. But the Wednesday night class next week is not, and the week after there is. Okay, so let's start.
Rabbi, who did you say the refuah shalema for?
Her name is Henya Bas B'rachad Leah. Okay. Now, last time we started in the dinim of Muktzeh, we started discussing what's called Muktzeh Machmas Chisarin Kis. Something which is, and this din is, it's completely Muktzeh, because this is an object that is removed completely from a person's mind. And this basically means utensils whose primary purpose is for something forbidden, and you're not going to use it for anything else but what it's made to be used for. And therefore, because what it's made to use for, you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So therefore, the object becomes completely muktzeh. And we started giving a few examples, and then that was it last week. So we're saying, for instance, a sheichet's knife, a moil's knife, a doctor's scalpel, all those things, nobody's going to use, like we said, a sheichet's knife, a moil's knife to cut a piece of cake. Okay, it's too expensive, it's too precious. They're not going to use it for anything else. Another practical example of this is when you buy things in a store, with the exception of food, and you're planning to give it back. You're planning to return. You bought clothing, you're going to return it. You bought whatever it may be. You bought it and you would decide to return it. So in those cases, it's again, you're not going to use it, because if you're going to use it, you might ruin it and you won't be able to return it. So therefore, in those cases, anything that you want to buy, with the exception of food, by the way, anything that you want to return, and therefore you're not going to use it because you might ruin it and you're not going to get your money back. So that would also be considered muktzeh machsarin kis, because of loss of money. And then the din is it's completely muktzeh. You cannot move it for any reason whatsoever. Now you have things that it depends really on the owner itself. For instance, cameras, stereos, iPhones, all these types of things. Now, primarily they're used for things which you're not allowed to do on Shabbos or Yom Tov. But at the same time, you know, you might not use it. If you have a very, very expensive camera, you're not going to use it as a paperweight. You're not going to use it to anything but what it's made to use. If you have a very, very expensive musical instrument, very expensive guitar, violin, or whatever it may be, you're not going to use it for anything else but to play music, which is forbidden on Shabbos. Now, if you have let's say a flashlight, okay, or calculators or a radio, they're not that expensive. Okay, you don't care. You use it for a paperweight, you use it to open something, whatever. So then it's not muktzeh machsarin kis. It's not considered a loss of money, and therefore it's completely muktzeh. Then it would be in the category of Kli SheMelachto LeIsser, like we learned before. A vessel's primary use is for something forbidden, so then you'd be allowed to move it if you need the place, or if you need to use it for something permissible. But if it's something that you wouldn't use at all, because it's very expensive and you'd only use it for what it was made to be for, so then it's Kli SheMelachto LeIsser. Or if it's more so that you're not going to use it for anything else, it's what's called muktzeh machsarin kis, and it's completely muktzeh. Now you can talk about the first iPhones, okay? The iPhones are expensive, but people today again, it depends how technology goes. But if you have an iPhone and you use it, you use it to hold something up, you use it as a paperweight, you use it as a bookmarker, then there's no din of Muktzeh machmas sorin kiss. Then it just go back to the regular Kli SheMelachto LeIsser. Then you'd be allowed to move it if you need the place, or if you want to use something, do it for something permissible. Sometimes you have important papers like driver's license, registration, contracts, say, deeds of a building, of a house, you have the deed. So again, according to many opinions, that you're not going to play games with. You're not going to make a paper airplane out of the deed to your house, or a paper airplane out of contracts and driver's license and all that. So then if you wouldn't use it for anything else, again, it's up to you individually. If it's something you wouldn't use for anything else because you don't want to ruin it, that paper is completely Muktzeh machzon kiss. I'll give you another example. If somebody has extremely expensive writing paper, like parchment paper or stationery paper, that's very expensive. They're not going to use it for anything else but to write things on, or to draw things, or artist's paper, whatever. They're not going to use it for anything else. They're not going to take an expensive piece of stationery paper and make an airplane out of it. An artist is not going to take a very expensive canvas that they're drawing on and make a who knows what from it. They wouldn't do it. So therefore, then it falls into the category of Muktzeh machmas sorin kiss, and then it becomes completely Muktzeh. Okay, let me go into another level of Muktzeh, which is extremely, extremely practical. And that is foods. Now, normally we learned that food is not Muktzeh. Now we learned already, food is never Muktzeh. But the question is, what happens if it's not edible? Now, let me just go back a second. When we say that if it's edible, it's not Muktzeh, that doesn't only mean edible for humans, even if it's edible for a dog. You have a dog or an animal and you'd give the food, you won't eat it yourself, but it's made for dog food. That's also not Muktzeh because it's edible for your dog. You have an obligation to feed your dog. So then it wouldn't be a problem. But food which is not edible is really Muktzeh because it's not food. And I'll give you an example that on Yom Tov it would not be Muktzeh, but on Shabbos it would be. Okay? Now, before we go to that, raw eggs. A raw egg you have in your refrigerator. By the way, this level of Muktzeh, you can't move for any reason either. If it's not edible, and we'll soon a lot of practical examples of this. If the food is completely not edible, it's completely Muktzeh. Now, raw eggs, there are people that eat, chazanim, like to eat the goggle-moggle is called. They beat up an egg and they'll eat a raw egg to make their voice sound better. Therefore, because it's not uncommon for people to eat a raw egg, so therefore a raw egg is not Muktzeh. But in the case, let's say, where nobody in that area eats raw eggs, they just don't eat a raw egg. So then that would be Muktzeh because it's not food. Or raw meat. Raw meat is normally not eaten. And by the way, it's interesting. In Shulchan Aruch, in the olden times, people did eat raw meat. So Shulchan Aruch says, in a place where people would chew uncooked meat for various reasons, whatever. So in that area, that part of the world, so to speak, then raw meat wasn't Muktzeh because it was edible. In America, meanwhile, they're starting to eat, just like they started eating sushi with raw fish. People are starting to eat raw meat a little bit. But generally speaking, raw meat is not edible on Shabbos. Yom Tov, raw meat is not Muktzeh because on Yom Tov you're allowed to cook. So you're allowed to cook the meat, so then it's edible. Yom Tov, the fact that you're allowed to cook raw meat, so then technically raw meat is an edible food. You'd have to cook it, but Yom Tov, you'd be allowed to cook it. Shabbos, you're not allowed to cook. So therefore, raw meat is completely muktzeh. Where is this a very big problem? Remember, it's completely muktzeh. You can't move it for any reason. What happens? You have something you want to get from the freezer. Okay? You have a frozen pie. You have ice cream in the freezer. Okay? And you want to serve it at the end of the meal, or during the meal, whatever it is. The problem is the ice cream is behind raw meat in the freezer. So the problem is you're not allowed to move the raw meat to get to the ice cream because it's completely muktzeh. If it's Kli SheMelachto LeIsser, we learned if you need the place or if you want to use it for something permissible, you'd be allowed to move it. So let's say something is blocking, Kli SheMelachto LeIsser is blocking something, I would be allowed to move it to get to it. But if you have raw meat in the freezer, you cannot move it in a normal way. We'll learn later about moving muktzeh indirectly. Sometimes you're allowed to, sometimes you're not allowed to. But the bottom line is that you can't move the meat to get to the ice cream. Therefore, what do people need to do? Before Shabbos, if you're planning to use something from the freezer, you have to make sure that it's accessible, that you're going to get to it. Okay? Now, in fact, they even go to another situation. What happens, there's a power outage. Okay? And now the freezer is not working. Or your freezer broke. Okay? And now you want to move something out of it to move somewhere else. So that's a shayla halacha. If you're allowed to ask a guy because of a loss of money, if you're allowed to ask a guy to take the meat and move it out of the freezer. But then it's a big shayla halacha. It's not so simple. On other things in that example, raw fish. Now, raw fish today, people are eating. If it's raw fish that they use in sushi, so then that wouldn't be muktzeh on Shabbos because people eat it. But if it's raw fish that nobody would eat today, again, raw fish would be muktzeh. So if you have raw fish in the freezer, it would also be muktzeh. That you couldn't move it. Or a bunch of other examples. These are just very practical cases. Raw, uncooked beans, rice, raw dough. Okay? If you have a can of rice, or can of beans, or a package of rice that's raw, it's completely muktzeh. You can't move it for any reason. That means if you have something in your refrigerator that's not edible, and you want to move it to get to something else in the refrigerator, or it's in your cabinet, and you want to get something behind it, and this is a raw can of beans or rice or anything that's not edible as is, you wouldn't be allowed to move it because it's muktzeh. If it's muktzeh, you can't move it. Raw popcorn. Popcorn is edible. But for instance, popping corn or like any food that you need to cook to eat, it's not edible as is. It's completely muktzeh. Any vegetable that's not edible as is muktzeh. To give you a simple example, raw potatoes are not eaten. Okay? If somebody does, they make a shahakol, they can't even make a adama because it's not the normal way of eating it. So if somebody has raw potatoes, raw sweet potatoes, turnips, and all foods, fruits or vegetables that are not edible as is, those are completely muktzeh. That's not called food. Food is not muktzeh on Shabbos. But if it's not edible for you or for your animal, then it's muktzeh. But Yom Tov, like we just said, wouldn't be muktzeh because Yom Tov, I can cook the potato, I can cook the rice, I can cook all the other things, and therefore all these things won't be muktzeh. But things that are eaten raw, for instance, they give an example: cauliflower, broccoli, spinach, squash, string beans, mushrooms. That many times people eat it raw in a salad. then it's not muktzeh because it's edible. It's not Kabbalah, it's very simple. If it's not edible, it's muktzeh. If it's edible, it's not muktzeh. But you can go into other things. To give you an example, bones, okay, that are hard, that sometimes you get in Yiddish, it's called the mach, you get the marrow out of the bone, people bite open the bones. But bones that are hard and not edible are completely muktzeh, unless if you're planning to give it to your dog, okay? Now, therefore, if you eat chicken and there's a chicken bone left on the plate that's not edible, that bone is muktzeh. Now, you're allowed to clear off the table. We'll learn a din that why you're allowed to take off stuff from a table that's filthy and maybe muktzeh. It's what's called gadif shodei. It's Chacham said if it's despicable, disgusting, it's not Shabbosdik to have that garbage on the table, so then you're allowed to throw it out. But to give you a few examples of this, from people, the women from years ago learned this in the Alter Heim, in the shtetl, that when you peel eggs on Shabbos, let's say you want to eat eggs, or you want to make an egg salad on Shabbos. What people do is they peel the eggs directly over the garbage. Because once eggshells are on the table, let's say you take a hard-boiled egg, middle of Shabbos meal, whatever, on Shabbos, eating a hard-boiled egg, you peel the egg, you leave the shell on the table, and you're eating the egg. And then you're still sitting there. As everybody knows, the tendency is your hands always need to do something. Your daimaskoni is saying. So then you're going to start playing with the egg peels, with the eggshells. You're not allowed to. That's muktzeh. Those eggshells are muktzeh. To give another example, any peel or any, if you have a bag of raw beans on the door of the fridge, as long as you have other things in the door also that are not muktzeh, you'd be allowed to open the door of the fridge because it's muktzeh, not muktzeh together. Any peel or shell which is edible is not muktzeh. If it's a peel or a shell which is edible, even though you don't always eat the shell, and I'll give you examples of this, then it's not muktzeh. For instance, walnuts, nobody's going to eat the shell of a walnut. It's not edible. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says in Siddur, the Alter Rebbe is strict. The Alter Rebbe says you shouldn't eat on Shabbos fruits or vegetables that the peel is muktzeh, unless if they're shelled before Shabbos. Why? Because people have a tendency of playing with it. Now, the Rebbe says in the Siddur, you shouldn't eat walnuts on Shabbos, unless if they're removed from the peel, from the shell before Shabbos. Now, the Rebbe says two reasons why somebody should not eat walnuts on Shabbos that's still in the shell. Number one, if you crack open a walnut, in between the nut is that thin membrane, it's called. Now, on Shabbos, the walnut is good, the membrane is bad. So you're not allowed to take away the membrane from the peel, from the fruit, the nut. You have to take the nut away from the membrane. But people are not careful in that. Plus, the Alter Rebbe says, the shell of the walnut is not edible, so it's muktzeh. And when you eat it on the table, people have tendencies of playing with it. Okay? Now, we know, like, for instance, even orange peels, to give you an example, orange peels are not muktzeh because people they make the marmalade out of it. People eat the inside white of the peel of an orange. Apple peel, pear, peel, obviously, all those things are edible. People eat them, even if you don't. Even, let's say, sunflower seeds. Yeah, pistachio nuts, the shell is not edible. It's hard. So pistachio nuts, again, are muktzeh. Now, while the nut is in the shell, it's not muktzeh because it's a food. It's edible. Once the food is taken out of the shell, out of the peel, whatever you want to call the shell, so then it's not an edible shell, so it becomes muktzeh. The same thing with any type of nut. You can go through all the nuts that have a shell or a peel that's not edible. Those peels and shells are completely muktzeh on Shabbos. Now, if you have it on the table and you want to clear off the table, then you're allowed to move it. But otherwise, you wouldn't be allowed to move it. The same thing, pits that are in the fruit. Now, for instance, apple pits are not muktzeh. Orange pits are not muktzeh because people eat it. People swallow it. Watermelon seeds are not muktzeh. But if you're eating an apricot or a peach or a plum that have big, hard pits in the middle of it, those are muktzeh. So if you want to eat, let's say, a fruit on Shabbos that has a pit in the middle of it, you need to make sure that you're not going to play with it. You eat the fruit and you have to throw out the pit right away. You can't play with it or, save it for whatever. So then it wouldn't be, if you're not going to eat it, if it's not edible, then it's completely muktzeh. If it's edible, even by some people, even though you're not going to be eating it, you don't eat those shells, sunflower seeds, the shells, you're not going to eat it, but people eat it, so therefore it's automatically not muktzeh. Okay? And again, like we said, therefore, fruits that have pits, it's best to take out the pit directly over the garbage, that then it falls into the garbage and then nobody's going to be playing with it and you won't have to touch it while it's on the table itself. Now, frozen food, coming back to the frozen food. Oh, let me say one more thing. Canned food that's ready to eat. But according to many opinions, you're not allowed to open cans on Shabbos. According to many opinions, you're not allowed to open cans on Shabbos, especially, I'm not talking about soda cans as much as, like a tuna fish can that you have to take a can open and open the whole circumference of the can. So even though you're not allowed to open, because those opinions that you're not allowed to open a can on Shabbos, but the can of tuna fish is not muktzeh. Why? Because the can is secondary to the tuna, and the tuna is edible. Technically, it's edible. But it's not that it's not edible because you didn't cook it. It's edible, and therefore the can is bottled to the tuna, and therefore the can and the tuna is not muktzeh. But coming back to frozen food, by the way, what?
So how do you open the can?
You can't, even if you can't open it, I'm saying. But the fact is the tuna is edible.
Mhm.
So the tuna is food. So therefore, and the can is bottled to the food. So therefore the can is not muktzeh. But for instance, frozen food, that all you have to do is defrost it and it's edible. Like you bake a cake, you put whatever. You put it into the freezer, but it's ready to eat. You just have to take it out and defrost it. Because you're allowed to defrost it on Shabbos, and it would be edible on Shabbos, okay? So therefore, those, if you take it out, it's not an issue. They're not muktzeh. Why aren't they muktzeh? Because they're edible. You defrost it, it's edible. Stuff that's raw is muktzeh because it's not edible. It's not ready to eat. Yom Tif, all these things wouldn't be muktzeh because, again, like we said, Yom Tif, you're allowed to cook. So therefore, there wouldn't be muktzeh. But frozen food that's ready to eat, anyway, would not be considered muktzeh in any way whatsoever. Now, Again, let's talk about medicines for a while. Medicines that are allowed to be taken on Shabbos are not muktzeh. Medications that are not allowed to be used on Shabbos, the creams that we said you can dab it on, but technically, creams cannot be used on Shabbos. So like we learned, those are completely muktzeh. A toothpaste container, because you can't use toothpaste on Shabbos, is completely muktzeh. Now, if they're usable on Shabbos, let's say people take medication for blood pressure, thyroid, heart conditions, whatever, or they're on a regimen of antibiotics for 10 days. So then you're allowed to take them on Shabbos. So those medicines are not at all muktzeh. They're not at all muktzeh. So what? I don't hear you.
In Eretz Yisrael,
I'm not answering it because I'm not talking about opening cans on Shabbos. Ask the rabbis in Israel about those cans. We're talking about muktzeh now. I'm not talking about opening cans.
There's a flip.
If you're allowed to open the cans, if there's food in the cans anyway, so then they're not muktzeh, I said. Are you allowed to open the cans? We're not talking about that now. That's all. Okay, now if you're allowed to take medication on Shabbos, then it's not muktzeh. Animal poison, okay, is muktzeh on Shabbos because you're not allowed to put out rat poisoning or any poisoning on Shabbos. We learned already if it's repellent, insect repellent, then that you're allowed to spray on Shabbos. It's a spray. Because if it's a spray, you're allowed to spray it on Shabbos because you're not killing anything. You're just keeping the bugs away from you. But putting out poison or traps, by the way, if you have a mouse trap, you're not allowed to put out a mouse trap on Shabbos. Because then you're catching on Shabbos. You're trapping on Shabbos, which is forbidden. Therefore, a mouse trap with poison or whatever is completely muktzeh on Shabbos. Cosmetics, if it's cosmetics that you're not allowed to put on a Shabbos, either because of coloring or because of smearing, so those medications that you're not allowed to put on a Shabbos is something completely muktzeh. It's not usable. It's not Kli SheMelachto LeIsser. It's worse. It's not a utensil, and therefore it's completely muktzeh on Shabbos. You can't move it for any reason whatsoever. Okay, we're going to leave it this here now. And as we met, okay, now we'll go to Tanya. Once again, I just want to mention next week there is no class. And this class is dedicated for the four shlema for Henya Bas, Barachat Varolea, that she should have a speedy recovery and a complete four shlema.
Rabbi Shusterman,
What?
can I just ask if you have like raw vegetables, like raw potatoes, sweet potatoes, and it's on your counter and you need a space, could you move?
No, I said those things are completely muktzeh. You can't move them for any reason.
It's not the Isser, not Muktzeh LeIsser.
It's not Kli SheMelachto LeIsser, it's completely muktzeh.
Oh, okay.
Something which is completely muktzeh cannot be moved for any reason. Unless if it's a day and the guy, somebody's gonna get hurt on it. But that's a different story. Okay, let's go to Tanya.